Okay.
Let me check our YouTube here. Yep, you're on there.
Okay.
It's a bit of a delay. I can see my face now. All right. All right, we should be good to go.
Good evening.
Hello, thanks for joining us. It's nice to meet you, everyone. Thanks for being here a little bit early so we can make sure that we have all the technical difficulties worked out. So we did just connect this call to our live stream page. And I am going to spotlight the three of you, and Dean Miza should be joining us shortly.
Okay.
I don't know if we want to do a quick introduction of all of us, but I'm Allie Stevenson. We've been emailing back and forth quite a bit, so I appreciate you being here and looking forward to this event. So thank you. AJ or Joey, do you want to go ahead?
I can go. Hello, everyone. Joey Shepard. I'm a second year doctoral student at the University of Illinois, studying in education policy. My concentrations are in history of education and higher education. And I'm looking forward to learning a lot from you all and how you're all thriving in this current climate we find ourselves in. And I will pass it gladly to my colleague in crime, AJ.
Thank you, Joey. Looking good, by the way, if I do say so myself. My name is AJ Espinoza. I'm a third year doctoral student in the College of Education's Educational Psychology Department. I specifically research teacher critical consciousness development, particularly high school teachers in all subject areas. And I want to say thank you so much for taking some time to join us tonight.
Well, I can introduce myself. I'm Kina Arbuthnot, Executive Vice President of Academic Affairs and Chief Academic Officer at Rutgers University. Very excited to be here. It brings back great memories to be connected with Illinois, and love to hear that two graduate students are working on this panel. So very excited to be here.
I'm happy to go. Shireen Pavri. I'm Assistant Vice Chancellor for Educator and Leadership Programs at the CSU Chancellor's Office. Work closely with Barry. Just got to meet Christella, 2 weeks ago? So that was wonderful. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us and look forward to the conversation.
Good
Very
evening.
good to see you all. Hi, Barry.
Hey, you hear me okay?
Yes, and I see
Okay,
you're wearing your Illinois tie.
Yes, how about that? Did it on purpose this morning.
Yeah.
I'm Barry Chung, Dean of the College of Education at San Diego State University, and I graduated from Illinois a long time ago, 96 from PhD in counseling psychology, which is in educational psychology. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, that's wonderful. This is just a test, Ali, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So,
Well, good to see you all. I'm very excited to moderate this this panel, to ask you the questions and to have the students with us. I do have one clarifying question, AJ and Joy. You will be asking the questions from the chat, is that correct? Yeah. Great.
okay. Well, I think we are logistically set up and ready to go. So if you'd like to turn off your camera for a little bit and grab a drink before we get started, or anything that you need to do. But I think we're ready to go. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us online this afternoon or evening or whatever time it is where you are. Welcome. I'm Cristela Musa, and I serve as Dean of the College of Education at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And I'm very pleased to present our Spring 2026 Dean's Distinguished Lecture, which is titled Leading and Thriving in Our Current Climate. And I really hope that you are as excited to hear from our speakers as I am tonight. As people are coming in, I will begin with a brief background on our lecture series. The Dean's Distinguished Speaker Series connects students, faculty, and our communities with the world's leading educational scholars. The goal is really to create a space for dialogue around meaningful, relevant topics that drive further scholarship and discovery. Our spring lecture is inspired by the college's 2028 strategic vision, which we have just completed over the summer and we're rolling over this year, called Boldly Education. In this current era of political polarization, rising demands on higher education, questions around equity, and accelerating technological and societal change, leadership in education must be visionary and resilient. Visionary and resilient is a fitting way to describe our panelist speakers tonight, who I would really like to welcome, as well as thank them for really being on our panel tonight. And I would now like to introduce them to you. Dr. Kina Arbuno first earned both her master's degree and PhD from the Department of Educational Psychology here in the College of Education at Illinois. She serves as the Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs and Chief Academic Officer at Rutgers University, where she leads the advancement of academic priorities and policies across the university. I know this only scratches the surface of what Dr. Arbuno does and her leadership experience and portfolio. We're thrilled to have her here today and really look forward to hearing a lot more about her leadership, her day-to-day duties, which I cannot even begin to imagine, and hear a little bit about how her preparation here at Illinois prepared her for that. Next, we have Dr. Barry Chang, who received his master's degree and PhD in counseling psychology from education here at Illinois. Dr. Chang has served as Dean of the College of Education at San Diego State University since 2018, and he's leading faculty and students across 8 academic departments. Under his guidance, the College of Education at San Diego State achieved its highest ever national ranking in the 2025 U.S. News and World Report Best Graduate School Rankings. Additionally, San Diego State's online master's programs in education were ranked number 3 by U.S. News in 2025, a testament to Dr. Chang's commitment to excellence. And we're really excited to learn more about his insights and strategies. There's a lot of healthy competition there. And just on a personal note, Barry and I are currently serving on some boards together, and it's just been wonderful to interact and hear and learn, from his experiences as a seasoned dean at San Diego State. And finally, we have Dr. Shirin Pavri, who joins us from California State University, where she serves as Assistant Vice Chancellor for Educator and Leadership Programs. Dr. Pavri holds a PhD in special education from the College of Education at Illinois. And along with her team at Cal State, she provides vision and support for achieving equity and excellence in educator, leader, and student preparation, both at the state as well as at the national levels. Dr. Pavri's 30+ years of teaching school psychology, research, and scholarship are truly extensive. And again, very grateful she's here to share with us some of her experiences. On a personal note, again, it was great to meet her a couple of weeks ago at the AECT conference, where she was also recently voted on the governing board of the organization as well. So I'm truly feeling very grateful for all of you, both, for being here, but also for having the opportunity to meet you and for being such great stewards and of our college, in various settings. So as you probably understood, all three of our panelists are proud College of Education at Illinois alumni, and all three are responding to big challenges and leading the way forward, really impacting the future of education across the nation and the world. So without further ado, we're gonna start with some questions for our panelists. I also, before we move forward, would like to acknowledge our students who are moderating the Q&A today, AJ Espinoza and Joy Shepard. As they already noted, please put your questions in the chat. And after we have, some of the formal Q&A, they will moderate the discussion and conversation with the panelists. So thank you all. Okay, so without further ado, we will start with the first question. So looking back at your time at Illinois, what learning experience or mentorship do you feel most shaped the leader that you have become? And why don't I start with you, Barry?
Well, that was a long time ago. I graduated in 96, and so it's 26 now, so we're celebrating a milestone. I want to highlight two mentors who have really influenced my work and in many ways, including leadership. I want to first mention Dr. Helen Farmer. Many of you may not know her. She was the, I think, associate chair of the educational psychology department at some point. She was a wonderful mentor. She was always very caring. And in fact, I nominated her for the Lifetime Mentoring Award in the Society of Counseling Psychology, and she won the award. That was very well deserved. She was just a very kind person. She has an open door policy. I know that I don't even need to make an appointment. I can just go to the second floor. It's a third floor, second floor. And then she's there and can I talk to you for 5 minutes? She would be there for me. And then when she went to conferences with us, she'd be like, who do you want to meet? John Crumbles, let's go and meet him. So she was such a wonderful mentor that I inherited a lot of what she did, and I do it for my students. So that influenced my mentoring, influenced my mentorship. I love to care for my students the way that she did for us. I also offer the same thing. Who do you want to meet? Because now I feel like I know a lot of people too. I can offer to connect them with the scholars that they wanted to meet, and really for the students, it's a very significant experience because it's, oh my God, I'm meeting the person I read about, in textbooks and all that. So that's one person I want to acknowledge. The other one is Lenore Harmon, who was my advisor. And when I got admitted to Illinois, I got a letter that my advisor was Lenore Harmon, and I talked to my undergrad advisor because he graduated from Champaign, Illinois too. He said, who's your advisor? I said, Lenore Harmon. He said, so you need to work 300% as hard because she had a very high reputation of being upholding rigor and academic standard. And that was very true. But I would add, though, that she also had a way of mentoring us to nurture so that we can meet those standards. So it's not just demanding. She knew how to help us achieve the achievements. So she taught me a lot about writing, and imagine that, I was an international student studying counseling psychology, which is very demanding on language and culture. But I worked under the best writer. She was the editor of 2 major journals in our field. And so I found writing was so important in leadership. For example, there are times that some people had a hard time getting things done from their professors and mentors. And so I would say, I can take a step at drafting an email for you. If you like the email, you can send it to the person. And then some people did that and they got what they needed the next day. So the magical power of writing is what I learned early on as a graduate student. I learned to be very savvy in putting down common ground and what I need, and not in a way that it would be demanding or offensive to the other person to get things done. She also taught me a lot about feminism. And so I really grew a lot in Champaign regarding my multiculturalism respect for women and support for women that led to my later work as when I was department chair in to really support women in academia and making sure that we close out the salary gap for women faculty and empowering them and supporting them. She taught me about advocacy and knowing how the tactics. I learned from an early age that my advisor was very good at getting what she wanted. For example, when I came in, I had no assistantship, I had no financial aid, and I talked to my advisor, Nanor, and said, I'm very poor, and so what can you help me? And then so within a few days, she found me a tuition waiver. And then and a few days later, she found me an assistantship. So I learned that she was not holding any leadership position, but she had the power to make things happen. So I was learning from her how to really exercise influence, even though you may not have the administrative power position. And so I benefit from that. And so I learned a lot about the tactics that we should use as a leader, that you can get things done, not by imposing your power, but by way of your tactics and influence. So that had worked really well in my leadership. I want to stop here.
That sounds very powerful. Thank you very much for sharing. Kina, do you want to go next?
Sure. I have to admit, 25 years ago, I stepped foot on University of Illinois campus. I was recruited at the time, and I was a K-12 high school teacher. And when I stepped foot on the campus and had a chance to meet all of the professors that I'd be working with, there was no choice. I had to come there. And I'm very excited about that. And I have been incredibly fortunate, even 25 years later, some of which are still my mentors. Some have passed. But I was very fortunate to meet some incredible people, not only my contemporaries, but mentors that will last a lifetime. I can begin by saying Catherine Ryan was my advisor. And she saw something, I think, in my application that caused her to give me a call and say, I'd like you to come up to Illinois and I'd like to take you around campus and meet a couple people to see if you'd like to join our program. Very excited to have that. That personal touch was very important. And when I came to Illinois, she really challenged me really to think outside the box, challenged me in terms of how I approach research, and even with the courses that I took. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Rob McDonald in psychology. He passed several years ago, but he was a huge mentor of mine when I was there. He believed in me beyond any other professor. I was actually in his classroom on 9/11, and his book was almost like a Bible, Test Theory, for me. And he saw how excited I was about that work and really became a mentor until I left U of I. Beyond that, I'd like to speak in terms of mentorship related to myself being an African-American woman in educational psychology. And there were, it wasn't a diverse field necessarily, but there were mentors in the building in the College of Ed that really wrapped their arms around me and my contemporaries and my colleagues that to this day we owe a gratitude to. For me, it was Bill Trent. Many of you all probably know him. He wrapped his arms around me. We were both quant people, and he was on my committee and always checked in on me and made sure things were well. Jim Anderson, of course. And what they built at University of Illinois during that time frame for you all, I'm sure you see some of the metrics in terms of those of us, particularly minority students at the time, what our trajectory has been in academia. And I would be remiss to not say that third floor was a place where we felt safe, we felt protected, and we felt supported. I will tell you one thing that I learned is number one is, set high expectations for your students, but also meet them where they are and help and support them. And you never know what a student is going through. I have to recall back, Bill Trent, I had a class with him. And every time we would come to class, he would have dinner. He'd have pizza for us. And for a graduate student, that was a lot because that was one night that you didn't have to worry about eating. And just that small gesture helped us all understand that he cared about us and wanted to make sure that our needs were met before we even began talking about quantitative research. And so I've taken that along the way with me, and I pride myself with being a great advisor. Those years I was in the classroom, I set very high standards, and all of that is based on my time at Illinois. And lastly, and I can only say it very quickly because it'll cause me to choke up, but Stafford Hood I met through the Illinois Connection. And we found out years after meeting that we had such he was a great mentor for nearly the last 20 plus years. As you all know, he passed away, but we found out after several years of working together, we were actually related. And just all the way through for the we've written together, and he was an incredible mentor, incredible person. And so I just think the Illinois Connection and what I received at Illinois is something that that to me can't be replicated anywhere else. And that's I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much. And I see that Denise is actually with us tonight, Denise Hood. So I know your testimony means a lot to her as well. I do want to make one comment around what you noted about this personal touch. Yesterday we have a new chancellor on campus, and he was visiting our college, and he asked to have lunch with our graduate students. So we had a small group of graduate students who met with them, and one of the questions he asked them was, why did they choose Illinois? And a few of them also noted that personal touch, faculty reaching out, and answering their questions and welcoming them once they were accepted. So I'm very glad to hear, that this kinds of experiences kind of persisted, and our faculty are still committed, to really continuing, those practices that we know have made a difference in our students over the years. Thank you. Sharon.
All right, so my thoughts are very much in the same vein as Barry and Kina. I graduated in 1999 from the Department of Special Education, and it was, and I know continues to be, a very inclusive, safe space. Really building community and making sure that everybody, our undergraduate students, our master's students, our doctoral students, of course, all the faculty, felt like we were part of a community, a family. There were resources for us, a little computer lab. I don't know if anyone on the call was in the special ed department. There was this little place with a few resources there. But I want to go back to why did I come there? And I want to give a shout out to my advisor, Dr. Lisa Monda Amaya, who also was one who, much like, those of you before me mentioned, she made me feel like I was seen and heard, and reached out and was very personal in her invitation to come and join the campus. And I met not just her, but so many folk who really just opened doors. So Janelle Benz, who I got to teach a class with, the first class that I taught with, I think, 80 students, they were undergraduate students in a 300 level course. I was petrified, and she was just so validating and supportive. Got to co-teach with another grad student, a master's level course when faculty member was out on sabbatical. Got to write grant proposals with several of our faculty. Got to work with Dr. Susan Fowler on the Class Institute, where we really did work on culturally and linguistically appropriate services for young children and their families. Just important skills that I think really well prepared me for a faculty position when I graduated from Illinois. I think another signature practice that I took away was the importance of being a scholar practitioner. Everything that we did was underlined with the so what question. Why are we doing this? How will this impact the lives of young people and their families? And that's something that I've carried with me in all of the work that I continue to do.
Thank you. And I actually see that Lisa Mondamaya is with us tonight. So I'm sure she's feeling very proud to hear this testimony. And just to your point about, connecting our scholarship to practice, how relevant that is today, especially in this current climate that we're navigating, where we have to continue demonstrating, the relevance of our work. So thank you for that. Wonderful. So I'll move on to the next question. One of the hallmarks of the work we do here at Illinois, both in the College of Education as well as cross campus, is interdisciplinary collaboration. You know, this idea of interdisciplinarity really runs across the whole fabric, you know, of Illinois, both in terms of curriculum and scholarship. Is there a particular moment or experience that you can share when working across fields or units that have really helped you move an initiative forward during a crisis or situation? So, you know, how this idea of interdisciplinarity that I imagine has, since the time you've also been here, you know, may have impacted the way you work or try to make connections, you know, across fields or units. And of course, you don't have to speak to your experiences specifically here, but over the years in your career, you know, identifying those moments that have really reminded you or emphasized this idea of interdisciplinary collaboration.
If I can begin, I can start with I have a very unique, I think, leadership trajectory. For those who know my background, I took a position in 2019 as the Associate Vice President of Research at Louisiana State University. And about 9 months later, of course, COVID hit. In the throes of COVID, the then president gave me a call during a faculty development Zoom and asked would I be the COVID czar for the university. So you can imagine the next 2 years of my life were crisis management on a daily basis. And I really, you know, ironically, there are some tools that were in my toolkit that I think started when I was at Illinois that really helped me navigate that space. Number one is collaboration and being able to get in the room with a lot of different people and make really difficult decisions. Maybe it's slightly different in terms of research, but really listening to people and helping to understand what perspective that they're coming from, and then trying to come up with a solution. The second part, which will probably surprise most people in crisis management, one of the tools in my toolkit that was most important was my background in evaluation. And those in Ed Psych know all of our great evaluators, Catherine Ryan, Lizanda Stefano, Tom Schwandt, I know, rest in peace, and others who really kind of talked about theory and practice. And I think, you know, we were definitely giants in the evaluation space. Well, I took that idea of formative evaluation into the leadership space. So I'm constantly always thinking about improvement. And so when we started in the crisis response to COVID, we had a lot of things that were against us. We were in Louisiana. We were always at the front of the curve when it came to COVID, and we had less resources than any of our peers. But really what I did is I pulled out a piece of paper and said we need to make a logic model and figure out what the expected outcomes we want, what are the goals and objectives. And, you know, the then president, who was a lawyer, kept saying, why do you keep bringing out these models? And then soon after, I don't know if you all, William Tate came, and he was actually the president during 2021 in the middle of COVID. And when I would bring out the logic models, he was very excited because he said, this is my language. I speak that language. But basically being really a data-informed leader during a crisis and really trying to lead in a way that's collaborative, responsive, but utilizes whatever tools you have in your toolbox. And I never expected to pull out, you know, evaluation logic models or my evaluation background to help me solve in such a crisis moment. But it really did help us. And in the end, it sent the then president to the Biden White House to talk about how successful we had been in our COVID response efforts.
That's wonderful. I see a lot of our evaluation colleagues on Zoom, so I'm sure they're very happy to hear that, including my colleague Tamara Bertner-Jones, who serves as the current director of the CREA Center as well. But I see a lot of other junior faculty here as well, so thank you. Sharon, Barry?
You know, I will, you know, I think again, I'll go back to in special education, you know, we learn a lot about working closely with families and really building communication and collaboration. So while there isn't a specific instance or example that I can think of, and Kina, I mean, amazing. I love how you built logic models. I wish we had that to guide. We were just pinch hitting and running, I think, when we learned about COVID. But I think some of the tenets of, you know, really essential basics of being an effective communicator, having shared goals, shared accountability, having a readiness to participate. I'm thinking of things like crises, like real budget crises, and we've dealt with those repeatedly over my years in administrative roles. And it's really collaborating. It could be with other deans or other areas within the university. It's even as a dean within my own college, really making things as transparent as possible, but then empowering people with tools to take ownership for the decisions that we make. Around what needs to be cut, what can we stop doing, what are non-negotiables, how do our values drive the work that we're doing. So I think a lot of that goes back to, I think about both my school psychology and my special education training around communication, collaboration, listening effectively and empathically, providing as much certainty as possible, being clear. Yeah, and I'm sure as Barry is a counselor, I can see him. He has things to share.
Thank you.
I
Barry?
want to share with you my experience with my assistantship. So in my last 4 years in Champaign, I was actually a graduate assistant half-time in the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. That is the provost. And my job was to do program evaluation of all programs in Champaign. And so that's a big job. You know, we have a schedule of evaluating all programs for the whole university on different years. I do have a team to work with me. I had to meet with department chairs and all that to lay out the plan of evaluation. And then I have to produce a report. I think it was that big for every department. At that time, it's still on paper. And not only we have quantitative surveys of faculty, staff, and students, we also have narratives from the survey. So one of my jobs is to actually type all the handwritten narratives into electronic copy so that we can print them out. And I can tell you that was a wonderful learning experience. I get to know a lot about every detail, all laundries of all departments, if you will. And so even though every department has very different discipline, what I learned though is that there's striking humanities across all disciplines. People are all the same. We care about very similar things. We hate similar things. And there's a common core that links us all together. And so it's not that much difference if you look at people in chemistry versus people in counseling psychology. So that was a great learning experience. I really enjoyed doing that. And so that really prepared me well for my current job as a dean and knowing how to support all units in my college, which I had not had to do before when I was department chair. And also learning the skills of collaborating together. So interdisciplinary work has become more and more trendy. In fact, a lot of faculty lines are done that way, cost are higher. So when you work in silos, it's hard to succeed. When you work across disciplines, people will look into the impact that you make and what are the other disciplines that work together to promote a common good. There will be a lot more than any one unit alone. So that becomes a very important strategy. And so I like to work with all the deans across campus regarding any advocacy of anything, proposals. We created a new undergraduate major, and there's leadership studies. And we made it an interdisciplinary major so that our college is the kind of platform to launch the major, but every college at the university provides some courses for the requirements and electives for the major. So if you want to know more about women in leadership or people of color in leadership, we have relevant departments that will offer that kind of courses. So that make it a very attractive. We grew from initially 5 students the first year to now 200 students in a very short amount of time. And so that's an example of how I learned about interdisciplinary work and finding a common core. There's a lot of commonalities across people than we may think about. And so if you can capture those and find common interest, then we can work better together and do wonderful things.
Thank you both. Sounds like great opportunities for collaboration, communication that serve you well. I'm still reflecting on that was a big job for a graduate student, Barry, that you had in the provost office. Sounds like it served you well. Wonderful.
They said I had a cushy job.
Wonderful. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about public engagement. So interdisciplinarity was, it's sort of like a thread, that cuts both across the university and our college. We're also working across campus on both curricular and research initiatives. But the other big tenet of what really distinguishes a lot of the work we do is our commitment to public engagement. And we were one of the first colleges here on campus to have designated director for engagement, and just our faculty, broadly speaking, our centers, our strategic initiatives, they all have a big commitment to really working closely with our communities, our faculty as well. We have a lot of opportunities for service learning and, for them to engage, in various projects with communities. So maybe what I would like to hear from you is how has that value of public engagement, maybe how has it shown in your own leadership, especially the way you partner with either school districts near your campuses, community organizations, or policymakers, as you think about, again, the important work you do across the higher ed spectrum. So Sharon, do you want to start on this one?
Sure, I'm happy to. So really, as I think about the work that we do in higher education, I can't see us doing that in isolation of our stakeholders, our partners, whether that be intersegmental, PK-12, our community colleges, our allies in the legislature, our philanthropy partners, everybody, right? So, and then when I think about our work in education, in the field of education specifically, and education and higher education, we just can't. It takes a village to prepare an educator, and so I think the role of partnerships becomes even more salient in that sphere. And so I really do think that we're stronger when we work in partnerships, and that the important thing is that partnerships, by virtue of them being a partnership, is that they're reciprocal, and that there's a mutual benefit to all parties who are involved. And that takes some time. It takes building of relationships, it takes building of trust, it takes really understanding each other's perspectives. And then there has to be, again, a shared goals and accountability in that space. So I think about, something like aligning our programming with regional workforce needs. That's a way in which we find these shared mutual benefits with our institutions being stewards of place. How do we co-create programs? How do we create programming that meets the needs of our partners, whether that's the need for teachers or the need for students in after-school programs, or working with families to prepare students to be ready for higher education, to meet entry requirements for college, whatever it might be, meeting basic needs for our young people. So specific programming, which may be things like developing apprenticeships or residencies, might be solutions that we have in order to meet these workforce needs that are aligned. And then the need for, I think, authenticity and engagement with our partners is so critical. Put the difficulties out on the table, see how we can share our resources, and really work towards keeping students always at the North Star of the work that we do. So I think those are important. I did talk a little bit about the advocacy groups. I think I can't emphasize enough just how important they are. Not just the legislators, but the nonprofit groups that really help, the legal advocacy groups, to move issues, because we really can't do it without them. And I'll come back to, funding is high on my mind right now, but it's really about trying to avoid unfunded mandates and where change is prioritized is truly important, then how do the resources follow those changes? And that's, I think, again, an important sphere with public engagement. And then finally, I'd go back to, as we see increasing threats and resources dwindling, whether that be based on policy priorities or shifts in foci for grants or things of that nature too. I really do think we need to reach into our values and stay our course and identify those elements that are really important to us and our partners, and find the allies that help us continue to move with these equity-based initiatives that we have identified as critically important for us.
Yeah, thank you. And you also touch on a follow-up question that I had, which is related to how do we build and sustain trust, with our partners, either schools, research partners, community organizations, advocates, because that's such an important component, of the public engagement. And that's the one piece where I think traditionally, as much as we have tried, perhaps we have not kept up, our own commitments to making sure that, our work, we don't come in, and conduct our own research or, get what we need, and then, not being able to sustain or move forward or contribute, to provide the supports that our community partners may need.
Yeah. Maybe do you want me to address that? I mean, I really do think we have to move from relational, I know somebody and someone knows me, because those are transient relationships. And so it has to move beyond that to institutional MOUs and partnerships. So I think that's key in sustaining these kinds of approaches. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Kina.
Sure. I'll start with my career really started as a high school teacher, and my experiences in the classroom is what led me to University of Illinois College of Education. So students have always been my North Star, similar to you, in terms of my work and even in my leadership. What I remember when I left the classroom, I kept asking myself, well, how if I go to graduate school, how am I going to have an impact on young kids or the K-12 pipeline? And when I was at Illinois, interesting enough, after about, I think it was my second year, I was in the community and I heard about a program called Project 155. I don't know if any of you all heard about it at the time. People were struggling. A lot of the high schools in the area were struggling with dropouts, issues around students dropping out. And I kind of love the tagline, Project 155. It was basically the notion that all the students that started in their senior year, we wanted to make sure that they graduated. And so I just really delved in, and in one of my projects for one of my courses, I really looked into this activity and actually connected some of the folks from the high school with partnered with some of the professors at Illinois. I moved on and did other work, and I think they continued that partnership. So that began kind of how I was trying to figure out how to weave in kind of my love for students, particularly the K-12 pipeline, and how my work at the university could be connected. Fast forward about several years at LSU, and I was in a leadership position. At this point, I was vice president of data and strategic analytics. And there was an idea that came up in terms of, we were hearing from the enrollment management vice president. And he was basically saying they looked at all of the admissions data and they found those students that came from public high schools right around LSU and Baton Rouge were not applying or getting into school. So basically we were in a community that we weren't serving. And so I think myself, along with some of the other cabinet members, basically got in the room with the dean of the College of Education at the time, the enrollment management VP, and said, we've got to do something about this. How do we do it? And within probably 2 weeks of getting in the room and collaborating and putting our heads together, we built what was called the LSU Future Scholars Program. And it became a pipeline program. It was actually modeled, ironically, after Rutgers Future Scholars Program, which has also been an outgrowth across the country. Several people have used that model. We actually expanded the model to start from K-12 and go all the way through doctoral program. And so we built that model, and within less than 4 weeks, the president at the time was able to secure $5 million to support that program. It is still a vibrant program, and the outcomes right now are extraordinary. So for me, it was kind of it didn't start at Illinois, but it continued through Illinois, just having that, finding a way, whether it's through a project or in my leadership position, hearing the needs of the surrounding community and trying to integrate the resources that I have available in my portfolio to see if I can meet the needs of the community around us. So I think that that's just one example, but it shows how you can leverage your leadership position, the resources you have, both human resources as well as potentially financial resources to help support the community that's around you. It's very important.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing and congratulations. That sounds like a huge success. We are might not come as a surprise to you that several institutions continue to struggle with these issues, especially around how to encourage our own population to be coming to our institutions. This town to gown divide that we're seeing in many higher ed institutions. And part of the work we have been doing as well is to connect with our schools here and to provide more opportunities for our faculty for our students to be engaging with K-12 students through service learning opportunities. And that helps, multiple levels, not just support, and serve as a peer mentor, but also, help them see themselves, as what does it mean to be a college student, here at Illinois. Thank you. Barry.
Yes, I happen to actually came to San Diego State University, where they have a very strong partnership model. The college education have mostly professional development programs. And so we will place our teacher candidates into doing school districts and student teaching. We have to place our school counselors and school psychologists and our counselors and education administrators. So without community partners, we cannot finish our academic training. So they're tied together. And so for that matter, it's so important for me as a dean to be outreaching and strengthen and create more partnerships. So that's what I did in my first year. I was so busy the first year. I visited every single superintendent of the school districts. I visited every president of community colleges. I also visited all the community organizations that support educational counseling. So it was a very busy year, but I'm so glad that I did, so that we, when I work with our faculty, I can talk about these, because sometimes they may not even know some of the resources, what the inspiring work that they do. So we're trying to create some partnerships going forward, and then the pandemic hit. And so we are not visiting anybody for a while. And then I realized that people have also moved on. So if you build relationships, they come and go. And so you have to keep building relationships, because the superintendent may step out and then another person comes in. And they may have a different priority going forward. So I need to learn to be very adaptive. And so one thing I learned about partnership is that you cannot focus on your self-interest only. You have to focus on their interest and find a common ground. Because nobody wants to work with you because your college benefits from a partnership. They want their share of interest. So finding mutual interest is so important, and that works for fundraising too. I do the same thing when it comes to raising money. And so I learned a lot about that. And so learning to be flexible, learning to listen, and not focus on your self-interest, and ultimately finding a common ground so that we can entice people. So our university recently signed an MOU with our San Diego Community College District to create a partnership, and they're using their bond money to pay for building on our campus. And we are going to provide a pipeline for community colleges to enter our university too. So it's getting very exciting. And I heard when we had the ceremony that was the first collaboration in the state of California. And that's why the people from the state government actually sent the reps to come in to the MOU signing ceremony. So I learned a lot about that, and also know about the tactics involved, because you need to build relationships. You don't want to build enemies. And so I learned to be more charming, in my role, and that is very important. I actually have people, donors who told my development officer that, oh, your dean is so charming. And I was so delighted to hear that, because sometimes it's actually that kind of personal touch that matter, because people like you, they care about you, and then they're more willing to spend time talking to you about collaboration. So I think there's a lot of content and characteristics that I need to attend to make it successful.
Thanks for sharing that last part. It reminds me of a comment that another of our alums has made in one of our gatherings, talking about philanthropy. That would be Don Williams, who said, people invest in people, So I think, your comment on, building relationships, with people, and helping them see, that, what the nature, and the contribution they're making, and how it would invest, in someone's leadership, and trusting that this, would move things forward. So thanks for that. Wonderful. Okay, so we cover quite a bit of ground, and now I want to move a little bit towards resources and leadership. We have about 13 minutes left, so and then we'll open it up for Q&A from our participants. So I'll ask the first question, which is about you kind of touch a little bit upon it, so maybe we can have a shorter answer to that, because I do want to make sure that we have a little bit of time to talk about pressures facing higher ed today. But I do want to ask if you have any mentors, networks, or Illinois relationships that continue to influence how you lead today. And as I said, I think I've heard pieces of it, but so I don't know if any one of you likes to follow up a little bit on that.
I can follow up, and I think this will be great for the students that are on this, that are here. Most of my contemporaries, the people that I call when I have those hard questions or I'm trying to solve a problem, all are Illinois grads. I can tell you, Illinois grads or former professors. I talked earlier about my mentors. Those are the giants that I go to with all of my questions. But the network, which are your contemporaries that are doing working alongside you in these positions, it's, Illinois created such a unique pool of people that I can really touch on, call, text. If I have a challenge, even trying to get resources. Maybe throwing ideas out, or even going on the job market. Can we do a call and help prepare? Chris Brown was a young professor, assistant professor when I started. M. Christopher Brown was a young professor. He's been a president at several universities now. But he was a close confidant and friend, and is incredibly helpful. I consider him kind of a mentor, but also a contemporary as we're still in kind of leadership positions. Dawn Williams, actually, which you mentioned. She's now the interim provost at Howard University, talk often. She actually called me when she went into the position. So my point being for the graduate students on here is that Illinois is a place, and those people that you were around during the doctoral program and during this process are really the people 25 years from now that you'll be calling for support as you make your way either through the tenure track line, in the field, or in leadership positions. And I find myself reaching out even more in leadership positions because you sometimes need sounding boards, and this is a great opportunity to make sure you keep your network flourishing. I see Margaret Hunt, she's part of my network. I've worked with her. Jennifer Timmers, my former student from LSU that I actually encouraged to go to Illinois. And I think Kathy Ryan's on here, which was one of my mentors. So it's just, to see that network just begin to grow is exciting, and I encourage all students to really leverage that while you're at Illinois.
I do want to share one experience in Champaign. I had wonderful mentors. My professors who were just amazing, and they really give me a lot of mentoring outside the classroom, and I appreciate that. The dynamic, though, was that I had white female and heterosexual white men professors. And being a immigrant Chinese gay man, I did not have that kind of role models in my program. And so I learned to actually make it work. I learned to learn from mentoring tactics from my white professors, so that I learned how to succeed in a predominantly white academic environment. And that was very helpful. So I learned to be successful and knowing how to play the games. And once I become successful, then I can try to change how games are played. And so that's how I feel about, I never really think that that was a deficit necessary, that I didn't have those mentors, because they really taught me a lot. Of course, I think the program now is very different than in the 1980s and 1990s. But I learned how to personally twist it and integrate things. And so even though like my research, I did research on gay men's vocational interest and Black college students' career motivation. And none of my professors were doing research on that. But I had a mentor who is willing to mentor me on any research project, and she's so supportive. My advisor became the first heterosexual person I came out to. And so all of these I learned to personalize, benefiting from their mentoring, and personalize it to make it work in my way. And so I would say that I become a person probably more than what my mentors imagined I would become. And that's because I learned to integrate all of the things that I learned from them, and also my own identities.
Thank you both for sharing. Anything else you want to add, Sharon?
No, maybe we could. I think they've given some excellent examples.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start with you on the last question. When you think about the pressures facing higher education right now, can you talk a little bit about the leadership lessons learned here at Illinois while you were a student, but importantly, throughout your career, you've served on multiple leadership roles that you feel were most essential to you? We're at a particular point in time, I feel, in higher education, and you all kind of touch a little bit upon it, throughout your responses. But, maybe if you can reflect a little bit on the leadership lessons that have carried you through that, again, either through examples or your own multiple experiences over the years.
Sure. So, I mean, I think again for the students here, maybe just highlighting some of the pressures that we're facing right now with lots of demographic shifts in our populations. Previously where we were in a position we'd open our doors and expect folk would just come in. There's questioning of the value of higher education. Increasingly Gallup polls are showing a decline in interest in coming into bachelor's programs and moving on to advanced study as well. Public policy pressures, the role of different emerging technologies, right? So what keeps you focused and centered, I think, around as a leader? And I think probably the most essential, the first thing is knowing your own why and why are you engaged in this work? What are your non-negotiables? What drives you for the work that you do? Because I think you have to be true to yourself. And once you're truly 100% aware of what it is that is driving you, that propels you forward in difficult times as well. So that to me, I think is a first thing. So self-examination, talking with others, professional development, maybe having a coach, all those kinds of things. I think once you have that, finding the organization that is a good fit for you in terms of, values, mission, purpose, and then having for the team, then, knowing once the organization's clear about the purpose, clear about the North Star, clear about mission, I think then it is really a matter of how do you stay the course. How do you continue to provide value? You have to be nimble and adaptive. I mean, there's no way you can survive. You have to be innovative and disrupt the status quo sometimes, because existing systems may be outdated, and what's the definition of idiocy is doing the same thing again and again and getting those same results. So I think those are, again, if you're clear as to where it is you want to go, why you're doing what you want to do, that's to me number one. I think the next important thing is really the teams that you work with, and how do you empower your teams? How do you distribute leadership? How do you get different perspectives? How do you trust subject matter expertise from the folk that you work with? How do you give them ownership? How do you give them the tools to do the work and that's so important. And how do you communicate clarity of expectations for your teams so that people are all, moving in the same direction with very clear expectations? So I would say those are some of the really important things, focusing on organizational culture, developing community. I just read an article on the importance of being calm, and I think there's a lot to take away from that as well, right? It's such an important leadership skill that we don't talk about a whole lot. So um, those are some of my lessons learned.
Yeah, I love that last part. Absolutely, right? Because we set the tone, a lot of times, in leadership environments, you set that the tone as you remain calm, under pressure, because otherwise, you get your judgment clouded, if you panic, if you're not thinking things clearly. So absolutely. So thanks, definitely thanks for sharing. And I also love what you noted about, remaining true to yourself and identifying what's non-negotiable. We've been having a lot of conversations, obviously, this past year about under, this tremendous pressures that we are, what is non-negotiable for us? What are the values that we're gonna keep relying, keep pushing forward, and being consistent, and maintaining, what we really and truly stand for. Barry? Actually, I see Kina. You can go next if you okay, either way.
I have so much to say about this topic, and maybe
Okay.
during the Q&A part we can talk more. But I want to highlight a few things up front. One is the consideration of standing for something and remain standing. And during this very turbulent time, a lot of times we have to think about how to stand for something and advocate for something. And for a dean or above, oftentimes we don't have the freedom of speech like other people do. We have to be very careful about what we say, especially in the public forum or in writing. And so that's one kind of dilemma that we face is like, okay, when something happens, you want to say something, where do you want to say it, how to say it? Is it social media or is it a statement to the college? And sometimes people have, oh, you didn't say anything, silence equals death, or you don't care. And then sometimes when you say something, you actually got into a lot of trouble. It could be dragging down the whole college or even the university sometimes. And so we don't want that either. And so the president also have the same kind of dilemma, even at the higher level. So something I need to watch and learn. And so we have a very wonderful unit we call it Strategic Communications, and they help us really deal with a lot of communication decisions. So sometimes we would think, okay, should we do this? How about this? And we draft something and then run by Strategic Communications and have the input and all that. So that gets back to the issue I mentioned earlier about standing for something versus remain standing, because there's a dilemma that a lot of times, especially in other states, California is not as bad, but in other states, you may actually cannot stand after you stand for something. And so do you want to remain standing or do you want to, it's like a choosing between, because sometimes you're at risk, and not only you personally, but also your whole organization could be at risk. And I'm talking about, say, the APA, American Psychological Association. So if they did something or say something, may eventually hurt the whole organization in some way. So, and that's why when I'm at APA, we talk about these matters, standing for something versus remain standing. I think that both are important. If I cannot remain standing, I cannot stand for anything in my position. So I think as a dean, I want to remain standing, because if I do something and then I compromise my career, and then who knows what kind of dean they're going to hire and where we're heading next. I trust myself in that I want to lead the college in a way that would continue to a good direction. And that may mean that I have to be very calculated regarding what I'm standing for and what statements I make. So I maneuver around all that by having more authentic and caring communications in person. So I would visit faculty meetings, I would talk to people, and I would be more careful regarding written statements that wouldn't get us into the radar, being targeted by the government. So that's something I learned about this challenging time. I was talking about.
Mhm. Thank you. So I guess the way, or what I'm hearing for you is that one way that we remain committed to our values is not always, through being publicly, making statements, but really through other means, so just showing care, for our colleagues in different ways.
They've covered a lot of it, but I would say that reminding yourself that leadership is a choice for those thinking about leadership positions or those that are in leadership positions. I always remind myself this is a choice, right? And I think a great exercise that all of us should do prior to becoming a leader is, what are our core values and what are your core values? And then ensuring that not just the institution, but the leader that you report to, if you're not the president, or you're not the board, even the board, making sure there's alignment with your core values and being determined to say, if there's not alignment, then I may need to make other choices. And being nimble in that way is very important. I think it'd be very difficult to really be a purpose-driven leader if you're not aligned in some ways. Now, I will tell you, if there's misalignment, to Barry's point, you may even ask yourself the question of, do I need to stay and stand to be the voice of those who don't have a voice? And those are choices you make. And I've come from a very interesting place prior to my current appointment, that there were times where some of that was definitely in front of me. And then the other question is about leadership. Definitely in this time, COVID is one example, is there's always a crisis. We went from one crisis to the next. If you read in the Chronicle in terms of leadership, both presidents, they're staying only 2 to 3 years in these positions. There is crisis management. We've had several crises in the last 6 years when I've been in leadership positions. So you have to figure out how to, Shireen said, stay calm, stay centered, and think about what's in front of you. And I think leading COVID really taught me that is, what is your North Star? What is your purpose? Are you aligned with the leadership team that's around you, as well as who you're reporting to? And then after that, you have to stay calm and you have to make sure you're able to be effective. And for me, I would much rather, as a leader, if I'm not effective and cannot be effective in my position, then that's not the position for me. And then sometimes that means I'll go back to being a faculty member, or I will find a position that's more aligned with who I am. And that's my perspective, but I think that's something for anybody thinking about going into a leadership position, those who are tenure track faculty right now, is you need to think about those things prior to getting into these positions, because when you're in them, it's much more difficult to make those decisions if you don't already have kind of your center, your purpose, and understanding, what you can and cannot do and what you're willing to do in that position.
Yeah.
If I may make one more really quick point. So I just want to, because I know we have students here as well. And I will say, I certainly came into administration. Leadership is something I see very different as being, an administrator. But I would describe myself as certainly a very reluctant leader, a reluctant administrator. And so I want to encourage people here to, if you see an open door, don't hesitate to walk through that door and give it a try. Kina said that leadership is a choice. You can always make the choice to leave the dark side, if you will, and go back to a different kind of position or a different institution. But I want to encourage people who sort of maybe sitting on the fence sometimes to just give it a try. The first year will probably be really hard, but once you know what you're doing, you can make a difference in ways that, your voice is needed. So I want to encourage folks to think about that.
Yeah, great point. Definitely great point, because I think a lot of us, as we enter academia, we don't necessarily think, that we want to be administrators, right? And I think a big part of it is making those decisions sometimes are intentional. Sometimes, we land in those positions because an opportunity came up. And I also think a big part of our roles is to also make sure that we are encouraging, people to step into those positions. Sometimes it might need a little tapping on the shoulder, for them to, begin to consider and see themselves, in potential roles. So then thank you for that. Wonderful. So great. Well, we covered a lot of ground. Thank you so much for being so candid and for really tapping on both your experiences here at Illinois, but also your diverse leadership experience over the last several years and across multiple institutions and institutions that are also, somewhat different, from each other. So I want to make sure we hear from our audience. So AJ and Joy, do you want to take it over?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And thank you again to our speakers. We are greatly appreciative of your time and your insights that you shared today. Please feel free to raise your hands or put a question in the chat. If no one has any questions, we have also prepared a few just to start for tonight. So at this time, I don't see any questions in the chat, and I don't believe anyone has their hands raised. There should be feature on.
So Kathy Ryan raised her hand.
Oh, yes.
Well, actually, it was an accident, but I'm glad that I got to come to this tonight. And I was just so impressed by these stellar experiences and administrators. And it was my great and good fortune to know some of them better than others. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. In that case, let's just go ahead and kick this off, starting with one of our prepared questions. If you look ahead to the next 10 to 15 years of education, what changes do you believe will most shape higher education and educational leadership? And how do you believe that today's institutions should begin preparing for them? Whoever would like to start, please take it away.
I'm happy to get us started. So, really, if we think about who our students are, as we think about, just the number of what do our PK-12 populations look like? And who is going to be coming into higher education? It's going to be a large number of adult learners, folk who are returning students, who don't necessarily fit the traditional mold of, the college student that has been historically students that we've seen. So how are we prepared to adapt to that? And I really do think we need to be looking at competency-based programs, shorter programs, degree completion programs, fast track programs, shorter degrees, stackable certificates and credentials. I think what are adult learners looking for? I think that's going to be a big part of the programming that we do in higher education. So I'll just offer that and have other ideas.
When we think about the demographic cliff and what we're going to see in the next decade, we're already seeing some universities and colleges closing down. You have to be play offense and defense. To Shireen, thinking about who you're serving, right? And the pool of 18-year-olds is going down very quickly. And we need to make sure that colleges and universities are resilient. And when we're talking about that, at the same time, we're having budgetary concerns across many institutions, even beyond just tuition and headcount. So really thinking about it in the context of what's going on around us and knowing that the competition is steep and understanding what that means and how you fit as a leader and how you begin to think through kind of the long-term consequences of the decisions you make today. When we talk about budget, when we talk about whether it's online learning, etc., we have to think about what that looks like both in the short term and what the benefits and drawbacks are in the long term. And I can show you examples of varying institutions that made poor decisions and they had to pay for it in the long term. So we want to make sure that we kind of insulate our institutions and are thoughtful about that. That means sometimes making really hard decisions that could potentially kind of insulate the institution long term. So I think education right now needs leaders that are thoughtful, innovative, and understand what's ahead. And if you think about artificial intelligence, that adds a whole nother layer to what you have to think about in terms of what the future of higher education will look like. And we're just at the beginning stages of this. And if your institution isn't thinking about this and innovating and thinking about what that looks like long term, I think you'll be behind. And I'm sure Illinois is ahead of the curve. I'm excited because you're my alma mater and I talk about you all the time at Rutgers, despite they don't like me saying it all the time. But I'm sure that's something that you're thinking about and your executive leadership team. But I think as leaders, we have to understand, you know, like the context is changing very quickly. And I think what higher ed leaders were a couple decades ago, very different now. And the skill set that you need now is very different than what was needed in the 90s or the early 2000s. And I think you have to be nimble and be thoughtful about what that looks like. And push people into these spaces that wouldn't traditionally go into the spaces. I mean, nobody thought that with my background I was ever interested in getting into leadership. I didn't either. I was kind of pushed into it, nominated into it, and then I found out that I can do this, but I do have some blind spots that I need help with. And then I would say I've done a fairly good job, and I've made my way through the leadership pipeline. But it took a lot of work. But I also think that bringing people in the space that maybe they weren't traditionally in that space is something that we're going to have to do moving forward.
I would say that we are at a crossroad for higher education. What's happening now and in the near future would have a lot of impact on higher education in the next 10 years, and some of those could be permanent changes. For example, the attack of the value of higher education, whether it's worth it to have a higher education. We actually got a beautiful bill that would demand us to look into the earnings of all of our graduates and justify, you know, why we should have those programs. Otherwise, they will cut the funding for the students. So that's another thing that we just got on our desk that we need to work on. Cutting research funding is a major one. Even getting away, doing away with the tenure system, that's another major one. So I think higher education is kind of under attack, and I couldn't help thinking that maybe some people thought that there's a correlation between having a college education and how they vote. That's my hypothesis about that. And so a lot is at stake right now regarding higher education. So we need to safeguard it. And a lot of success this past year is at the legal level. So we are engaging all the state attorneys general and join hands with other states and file lawsuits against the federal government on certain things. And to some extent, it actually saved that in some ways. So things are not as dying as 8 months ago. There's some more turnaround when we take action to protect higher education. So I think we need to continue to do that because if we give in, 10 years from now, higher education could be very different. And what kind of faculty members would be hired? What kind of research they can do? I mean, if I could come back and apply for a job as assistant professor, maybe nobody will hire me because of the kind of research that I do, you know. So I think it's a very important time that we need to think about our future and do a lot of advocacy work.
Thank you both. I would say I'm impressed that it took us 1 hour and 15 minutes to bring the word artificial intelligence up. That must be some new record, you know, given all the conversations, but I think you did bring up great points, all of you. Thank you. And just a quick point on the degree completion and competency. That's something that we have been looking closely here at Illinois. In fact, our LAS college will be launching a new degree completion program this fall, which will be for non-traditional populations. So those students who might have a little bit of college coursework, but never graduated, which, as you know, that's sort of like the population that typically gets hurt the most, because you accumulate either some kind of debt, or to, through your coursework, and then you don't actually have the degree, which puts you in a pretty disadvantaged spot. And we have an early childhood degree completion program for early childhood professionals who already have an associate's degree, and they can complete the remaining of their bachelor's online while keeping, their employment, as early childhood providers, which obviously opens up a lot of career opportunities down the road. And I think one issue that I try to share more broadly, especially as we're in recruiting season, and I think you both kind of touch a little bit about it, is this idea of career progression, right? So we tend to forget that, our field of education, yes, we might not always start with the highest salaries, but all these wonderful opportunities for professional growth, for career progression, that I think we've got to do a better job about articulating, especially as students. Especially given the attention now, on financial outcomes, and salary ranges and all of that, and thinking a little bit more long-term. Thank you.
Alice, thank you all so much for this engaging conversation we've had this evening here in Champaign, Illinois. We had a great question from one of our participants, Priya. They mentioned that they teach leadership preparation across P through 16 in nonprofit sectors. And their questions to you are the following. What is one particular skill or competency that you would like to see all leaders learn in a doctorate of education program? And the follow-up was a skill or competency that, in all caps, everyone needs in their leadership practice.
Priya, that's a great question. I mean, the ed leader is so critical in every setting, P16 and nonprofit. I mean, what's the number one reason that teachers say they leave? Let's just say P16. It's not salary. It's really whether they feel like there's someone there who's supporting them, who understands what it is they have to do, who sets the tone. And so you ask us for one. And so I will just start with one to me, which is effective communication, listening. I always say we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and listen a heck of a lot, and then be very clear in both supportive and clear in what it is that you expect.
I would say strategic, and being able to share your vision with those that either report to you across the institution, etc., external constituents. But being strategic is incredibly important. I've seen leaders kind of flounder when there's no strategy and there's no vision. So you have to be strategic and have a vision. And the next one would be compassionate, and I think that goes with Shireen. It's just understanding, being able to understand all the stakeholder groups that are impacted by the decisions you make is important.
I would say negotiation skills will be very critical for leaders. It could be negotiating with the peers or with people you report to. There's a lot of negotiation, and finding good ways to negotiate so that you're not making more enemies. You actually facilitating listening to each other, finding common ground, and then establish an agreement that move forward. And then the other thing I want to share is the importance to embrace diversity in advocacy. So that's something I'm observing, is that sometimes people are so passionate about advocacy, they see only one way of doing advocacy. And either their way, or you're wrong, or you're not doing it. I think that hurts everyone. I would embrace diversity in advocacy. People chime in different ways. Some people donate money, some people write, some people speak using the speech. Some people sing, some people do drama. Everybody has or some people just forward email. That could be a way of advocacy. So I think a better way to do advocacy as a leader is to embrace diversity among everybody, so that we actually form a coalition rather than criticizing each other and say, you're not working hard on advocating. I'm doing the right thing and you're not. So that hurts everyone in the moment.
Thank you all for your great responses. And Priya commented back and said, communicate, negotiate, embrace diverse advocacy, and do it strategically. I'm on it. Thank you. I think that's a task for all of us going forward, Priya. Great question to our panelists. I have one more question, then AJ will ask our final question because we won't be mindful of time. And you all have touched on this question, and our theme for this question was advice for emerging scholars and leaders. And we really wanted to know just what is your one piece of advice that you would give to us as early career scholars, graduate students, about preparing for leadership roles for ourselves in the field of education over the next decade?
I have one. I would say yes more often. I know it's contradictory to people who say, you need to learn to say no. Learn to say no. I'm the opposite. I want to encourage people to say yes more often. I will tell you why. There were times in my life I didn't think that I could do this or that or that. I could not be a leader, particularly being an immigrant speaking English as a second language and being gay and being a person of color. I didn't think I could. But then I have a lot of mentors who saw something in me, who nudged me, say, you need to run for this office, you need to apply for this one. And I always answered, oh, you're so funny. And they said, no, I'm not funny, I'm serious. You need to do this. And so being a good Chinese boy, I finally said yes to my mentors. And I did it. And when I did it, when I won the elections, when I apply and get the positions, I realized that I actually can do it. I can do this. So that's why I say yes more often. When people come to you for no benefits to themselves and they encourage you to do something, trust them. They saw something in you and you need to trust yourself too. So say yes more often.
I would say build a very strong network. That network will include mentors. It includes your colleagues and other students that are working alongside you, as well as even your mentees. You can learn a lot from those that you mentor along the way. And the more you strengthen that network as you begin to think about leadership positions and go into those positions, you can really leverage that network to help support you, both emotionally as well as helping you to better understand how to navigate that space. So I would encourage people, definitely students, to really think through building that network.
So I would say, know your purpose and find your voice. I really think, I mean, leaders don't have to be invisible roles like, having a title or something like that. I mean, we have incredible faculty leaders, we have incredible student leaders who don't have an official title behind their name. And so I think grow those leadership skills, but know your purpose and where is it that you want to go. And if you see, and I'm not talking about necessarily leadership, but just what change do you want to see and how can you be part of that change? And if you see a door open, like Barry said, walk through it. I might say be selective in where you say yes, because you could be doing a few distracting things that may take away. But yeah, you want to build visibility as well. And people know you as someone who's reliable, dependable, makes change, builds coalitions, things like that. Yeah.
Thank you all so much. We appreciate your insight and your answers. So we are at the final 5-ish minutes of tonight's event. So I want to thank you all once again for your time. I also want to acknowledge that Itrat sent an excellent question in the chat. What experiences during a PhD program best prepare scholars to take on leadership roles such as department chairs, deans, or policy influencers? I think that's an excellent question. And certainly if you have more to say, we would very much be interested and follow us, we'll be sure to email you any spare questions that we have from the audience as well as ours. But we'd like to end off on one last note. A lot of talk about the legacy of Illinois and networking and maintaining your networks has come up tonight. So what better way to end off than by asking this? What are the most meaningful ways for us to stay in contact with you, as well as to continue building this strong, supportive network across the College of Education with current students, faculty and staff, as well as alumni and allies?
I think you asked a simple question. How do we stay in touch? And you have our email, so feel free. I mean, I really do think alumni open doors. And so whether it's opportunities, whether it's just asking questions, whether it's learning more about different fields or professions. So if the question was, feel free to email. Happy to respond and guide folk.
I definitely
Thank
think that connection, as well as at AERA, it's wonderful to go back to I think that's a great use of funds to have those receptions, because it gives us an opportunity to engage and connect. And I met Dean Musa last year prior to my new appointment, and I just think that's a great way to connect. But also reaching out for panels like this, I thought it was a great opportunity, particularly if it was virtual. It definitely didn't conflict with my schedule, and it was a great way to connect. And now I'm here and I see a bunch of people that are part of my network or have been part of my network in the audience. So this was to me, I thought it was a very thoughtful way to connect people, and potentially others would want to join as well and do something similar.
There was a long time I didn't get a whole lot of communication from Illinois, but then now I don't know why I'm getting daily emails from Illinois Alumni Association, and so I don't know what happened, what kind of leadership changes and strategic changes, and so it serves in my inbox every day almost, and I really enjoy having a connection. In fact, I think one time I got an award because of an alum from Illinois who nominated me in a professional organization. We touch base, we care for each other. Sometimes it's hard to keep in touch because when you spread out across country or even globally, it's easier to lose touch. So I know Illinois has a amazing reception at AERA, so that's helpful to go back. And I always love that, getting the gadgets. And I think one thing that could be helpful is maybe to have more regional activities for alums. Like if in Southern California, if we have some activities, I want to connect with alumni, and in addition to the electronic communication, and I realize that the older we get, the harder it is to actually make more friends. We kind of get stuck on the old friends, and then one by one they go away, and that's the reality of life. And so I would love to be reconnected with people I went to school together, and how are they doing? Some of them I think about them, but I wonder what they're doing now. I don't hear from them. So if the college can think about ways to connect us in some way, I would love to have the contact information or Facebook or whatnot to get connected. And I appreciate having the opportunity here tonight to share with you my experience, and I hope that if you like what we share, you can connect with us. We would love to hear from you.
Well, thank you all. I do want to say on the issue of AERA reception, it's on Saturday. You're all invited. You probably received the invitation already. It's always one of the highlights of my year, to get to meet new alumni and see alumni that I have known. So that's wonderful. Every day I get impressed by the extensive footprint and, the rich alumni that we have on all corners of the world, literally. So if for the students who are online, if you're ever in need of a particular mentor or in need, of expertise in a particular area. Or I don't know if my colleague Allison is here, if she's always reminds us, if you're traveling in any part of the world, let us know. We'll connect you with alumni because they're literally everywhere. From my part, I have benefited tremendously from the Illinois Alumni Network. Barry has been a good colleague in the dean circles. I had the pleasure of meeting both Shireen and Kina previously, and in some of the dean's convenings that we have, it's always impressive to see the Illinois representation. There's probably almost 10, other deans, across the country, who are in that group. I have been very grateful for the support that I have received from all of them, in my role. So anytime you need something, reach out. We'll always be happy to connect you with our alumni. And thanks for the suggestion, Barry. Okay. With that said, we're right on time. So again, thank you so much, all of you, for making time. I know how busy you all are, as sitting administrators. We really, really appreciate you making yourself available for this conversation. I know I speak for all of us and our students as well. Really appreciate how you really share lessons from the heart as well, and not just for us, internally, but for our future leaders, in the space. So thank you all again. And thanks to our moderators as well, AJ and Joy. And thanks to all of you who have been here with us tonight.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for the invite.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.